Big Mom is about to pull off the most insane redemption arc in One Piece history. If you saw my last Big Mom video explaining the real meaning behind her hunger pangs, you know this theory has been cooking for a while. If Oda has been leaving hints, as I believe, signaling the dangers posed to the Treasure Tree Atom later in the Elbaf Arc, Big Mom is about to sacrifice herself to become the living soul of the Treasure Tree Atom to finally resolve her unfinished business and bad blood at Elbaf. To prove this, we're diving into all the unresolved ties Big Mom has to Elbaf, the hidden foreshadowing and clues Oda's been planting for years, and the symbolism and themes that make her sacrifice meaningful, and most importantly, how this insane theory could transform Big Mom's legacy from destruction to salvation. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this might be the most unforgettable character moment in One Piece history. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the one place that's haunted Big Mom her entire life, Elbaf. The place where everything went to shit. As a kid, her hunger pangs escalated and she accidentally killed Jorl, one of the top giants. From that moment on, the giants fucking hated her guts, and honestly, can you blame them? To them, she wasn't a child. We're practically talking about Satan's spawn with pigtails over here. Kicking her out was the best punishment instead of the alternative, death. And then you got the whole cannibalizing Mother Caramel mess, which, by the way, I'm gonna be back and forth with calling this asshole caramel. I don't know which is right. Who cares if we're being honest? She sucks. Oh yeah, and cannibalizing her preschool friends. That's also another thing that sucks. If it's becoming clearer for you, you can see why Big Mom needs to return to Elbaf for her own sake. I mean, Jesus Christ. And what's crazy to this day is that Big Mom had no idea that Mother Caramel was nothing but a child trafficker planning to sell her off to the world government. That whole kindness sister act bit was part of a sick business where kids were nothing more than just merchandise to be sold to the highest bidder. To her, Mother Caramel was the only person who ever made her feel accepted, the one ray of light in a world that just kept slamming the door in her giant face. And while her flashback doesn't delve too deeply into Big Mom's psychological trauma as a child, I think it's safe to say that she believes it was all her fault that Mother Caramel and her friends, quote-unquote, abandoned her. Oda has made it his mission to clearly portray Big Mom as a deeply scarred and tragic character in need of constant 24/7 around-the-clock therapy. Considering how Elbaf values strength and honor and dying gloriously in battle, which is a polite way of saying that they believe funerals should double as Michael Bay films, their warrior code definitely appears as an opportunistic checklist that Big Mom could tackle, so when she eventually goes for the whole redemption through self-sacrifice thing, chances are the Giants are willing to look the other way after years of mourning for one of their beloved leaders being seismic tossed by a child. Granted, a regular child with irregular issues. And if you've been paying attention, Oda's been dropping hints all over the place that this is precisely where her story's headed. If any of you, for even a moment, genuinely felt bad for Big Mom because of her flashback, congratulations, you're not a piece of shit. You possess what I call empathy. I believe Big Mom's flashback effectively leaves just enough grace for us to conclude that, yeah, how Big Mom ended up the way she did, not entirely her fault. She simply wasn't surrounded by the right kind of role models. That's why I believe it'll take a village to bring Big Mom back into reality and help her understand she's crossed a lot of lines in the sandbox. And I mean a ton of lines of all types. You got your wavy lines, zigzags, this fucking weird thing. So who's part of this village, you may ask? Let's start with Chopper, because the weird amnesia subplot insert in Wano's Gotta Go Somewhere. Of course, throughout this interaction, Chopper is completely scared out of his mind that she'll snap at any moment. However, he also spends more time with her than probably any other Straw Hat, if I recall correctly. He sees her in this strange, docile state, making friends with Tama. It's not that he suddenly perceives some tragic death in her, as we, the audience, did during her flashback, but it's also not nothing. It's complicated. We're witnessing Big Mom acting like the person she could have been, and Chopper's presence during all of this is significant. He's a doctor, the one who's supposed to help people, even those on the opposing team he's willing to throw a bone to. I think that's something to keep in mind for the future, because it not only adds depth to Big Mom, but also shows Chopper's possible future role. He has witnessed her vulnerable side and knows she has the capacity to not eat your face in a fit of rage. And when you really think about it, Chopper and Big Mom actually have a lot more in common than anyone gives credit for. Both have a huge sweet tooth and share a pink colored theme. Sometimes they behave like kids, not just sometimes, like 90% of the time. Each is viewed as a monster in their own unique way. And this is where things get even deeper. Chopper is more than just a doctor. He's a healer, a healer of many things. Big Mom Smooth Brain is not one of those things. He was raised by Dr. Luke, who believed that there's no such thing as an incurable disease. He taught Chopper that people could be healed not through medicine, but also by healing their hearts. He once suffered from a terminal illness, something evidently physical, but one day he traveled to a distant land where he saw a mountain covered in the overwhelming beauty of the scene, and the emotion of the moment healed him. Now, did the cherry blossoms literally cure him?
No.
Not in a biological science textbook way, and that's the whole point. It was a psychosomatic cure. Luke was dying, but seeing those cherry blossoms triggered something in him. Hope, joy, and purpose. It's the entire reason why Luke invented the cherry blossom powder. He wanted to share the experience of joy and hope he felt after seeing those cherry blossoms. So by sacrificing her soul to Treasure Tree Adam, Big Mom could shift from her long-standing habit of taking to one of giving, and her twisted love into something genuine and enduring, becoming a living symbol of love through sacrifice. And Chopper's contribution to her character arc ties it all together. And then there's Gerd, a much subtler piece of the puzzle, and funny enough, another doctor just like Chopper. Gerd was Big Mom's childhood friend when Lin still had a chance at normalcy, but after Big Mom killed Jorl, Gerd, like the rest of Elbaf, had no choice but to cut her off. However, unlike the others, Gerd does remember who Big Mom used to be, that innocent, sweet girl who just wanted to be loved. And now we get to Bonnie. Bonnie might actually be the sleeper key to Big Mom's entire character arc. Let's start with the obvious. Bonnie and Big Mom look eerily similar in terms of character designs. They both have pink hair, and even their makeup, especially with the lipstick, is quite similar. They eat as if their lives depend on it, and these comparisons are exactly why people once theorized that Bonnie was one of Big Mom's daughters. While that's not the case, it's still hard to ignore the similarities between the two, suggesting that something narratively must arise from these parallels. Additionally, one aspect I believe people may not have picked up on is their connection to the world government, with Mother Caramel collaborating with the world government in her child trafficking business, and Bonnie's father Kuma, who undertook a journey of becoming a prisoner of the world government, being experimented on for the Pacifistas Project, and ultimately descending back to slavery. But it goes even deeper than that when you think about it. Bonnie used to suffer from sapphire scales, a fatal illness that worsened under natural light, from which she was eventually cured thanks to Dr. Vegapunk. In my previous Big Mom theory, I speculated that her hunger pangs might also be triggered by her body's inability to process energy from sunlight due to what I proposed was her partially activated giant DNA. This is just a theory, but even if a small part of it is true, Bonnie and Big Mom might share more than just surface similarities. They could be biologically linked in the way their bodies respond to the world. But here's where it gets wild. Bonnie can age herself down with the age fruit. Why does that matter? Because it would activate Big Mom's Mother Mode, the only time she shows maternal instincts. Mother Mode only activates around kids aged 10 and younger. So imagine Bonnie, who is presently her actual age of 12 in the Elbaf Arc, ages even further down to the age of 10, triggering Mother Mode. This could be the breakthrough moment, a chance to open a calm and collected dialogue with Big Mom without her trying to kill you. This exchange could crack something open in her, and Bonnie, who's already spent so much time confronting all the bullshit with rescuing her father, Kuma, could also contribute to helping Big Mom face the truth about Mother Caramel. Together, they could make a powerful thematic pair. All these interactions with Big Mom involving Chopper, Gerd, and Bonnie seem to be in the cards. Now that we recognize these connections, we must explore the deeper meanings behind certain symbols and themes that Oda has introduced into the story. Let's talk about ships. Not the kind that fans argue about on Reddit, actual boats. In One Piece, ships aren't just for transports. They have feelings, experience breakdowns, and full-blown existential crises. They are fully developed characters, and in the unique case of One Piece, they are shaped by the emotional attachment pirate crews have towards them. This connection is embedded in the language, the tradition, and the story of sailors. Referring to a ship as she illustrates how we project care, safety, and memory onto something that carries us through danger as a home. And yeah, that sounds a bit too far dramatic, but that's kind of the point. In One Piece, the absurd and the emotional aren't separate. They live in the same place. A ship can have a lion face and still represent unconditional love. That's the magic of it. And if you're enjoying the theory video so far, you can leave a like and subscribe with only 2 clicks. Just like magic. Actually, nothing like magic. There's no such thing as magic in this godless world. Now, layer that onto Big Mom. Her whole identity revolves around a distorted vision of motherhood that lays the groundwork for her character to evolve. Now, I'm not saying Big Mom's gonna turn into a ship, because this video is already about her turning into a tree, but answer the simple question for me. What are ships made of? Wood. And where does wood come from? Trees. And would you look at that? we have a tree with the strongest wood in the world, used to make the ship of the future king of the pirates, right here on Elbaf. All of the random ship talk is to say that if ships are mothers that carry us, trees are the origin, that quiet source of strength, the foundation. In this way, Treasure Tree Adam symbolizes motherhood in its purest form and aligns perfectly with the concept of Big Mom reincarnating into the tree. But here's where things take an interesting turn, because before a tree can become a ship, before it can carry and protect life, it has to be cut, it has to be shaped, and what do you use for that? Actually, a lot of things, but let's just say an axe for no particular reason. We have plenty of people using axes, especially in the Elbaf Arc, and I believe Oda wants us to view the axe as a symbol of change, representing both destruction and creation. It represents the ability to end something while also allowing for the opportunity to build something new in its place. Elbaf serves as an excellent backdrop to explore this idea because much of its lore and culture is inspired by Norse mythology, especially with Ragnarok, a catastrophic event that involves both the destruction and creation of the universe. This theme is subtly present, mainly through three characters in the Elbaf Arc associated with axes: Skabrgaban, Gerd, and Chopper, believe it or not. With Chopper, the entire reason he was given that name in the first place is that Dr. Hiromu compared his antlers to axes for chopping trees. However, given how we established the dual creation and destruction symbolism behind the concept of axes, you could kind of squint your eyes and see that Chopper fits the bill by using his inner and outer monster to protect people, transforming what should have been a curse into a gift. That's creation born from destruction, and that's what Big Mom needs to learn, that the monstrous parts of her don't need to disappear, they just need to be repurposed. With Gerd, she was a close friend of Big Mom's when they were kids, and after the disaster in Elbaf, she cut ties. Not because she stopped caring, but because she understood the danger Big Mom posed to her people. That's an emotional axe swing, and I'm not saying that just because she uses an axe. Sometimes love means walking away. Now, years later, she might be one of the few who can remind Big Mom of who she used to be, the child who wanted to be accepted. Last we got Skabrgaban, who I don't see personally involving himself in the Big Mom intervention. Still, for the sake of him carrying around axes, I see no reason not to include him because I think he serves a thematic purpose that contributes to Big Mom's character arc. Now, Gaban's twin axes aren't just for show. His entire vibe centers around breaking down barriers. He calls himself the preacher of love. The guy fights with weapons made to tear through walls, or in his case, a mountain, yet he speaks like a man trying to free hearts. That's not an accident. I see what I did there. The axe in his hands becomes something more than merely a weapon. It's a philosophy, love without limits, destruction that leads to something better. And that makes him thematically perfect for the story because Big Mom has been doing the opposite for her life, using fear to keep people close, controlling love instead of letting it breathe. But through Gaban's lens, through the metaphor of the axe, there's a path forward, a way for her to stop forcing love and start freeing it, to cut down the warped world she's built in Topland and offer something new in its place, something born not from domination, but from sacrifice. When considered this way, the axe serves as a metaphor that connects all of them, including Big Mom, teaching us that we can rebuild what has been destroyed. In Big Mom's case, sacrificing her soul to restore the Treasure Tree Adam would be her atonement for what she destroyed in the past, allowing her to create something better in the future. And what that could look like is what we'll get into next. Since Elbaf holds the key to Big Mom's resolution, let's talk about the current state of the island. Elbaf takes pride in its warrior lifestyle centered around war. However, before his death, King Harold decided it was time for a cultural shift. He sought peace, trade, and diplomacy, a new Elbaf that wouldn't address every problem through passing out from drinking with an axe lodged up your ass. In fact, he was so committed to this cause that he removed his own horns, rejecting his ancient giant lineage. But here's the catch. While those reforms made Elbaf tread into a more peaceful territory, they also made the next generation little bitches. The kids are just ill-prepared for the tiniest inconveniences, let alone an invasion of their fears coming to life. So now you've got a nation split in two. The chiefs of the past refusing to let go of tradition, and the future who simply can't stand on business. This is where Big Mom comes into play because the irony is that she represents both extremes in a broad thematic sense. One side of her is chaos incarnate, practically a one-woman army ready to square up with whoever lays a fingernail on some Senla. On the other side, there is a kind, gentle soul of a little girl that's just really not that bright. I mean, let's be real. And I say this with the utmost respect. Baby Big Mom was a fucking idiot. And yet, who better to symbolize the need for balance and harmony? Here's the thing. With Elbaf being a culture that relies on symbolism and storytelling as a framework for living, it makes sense for a symbol, aside from Sun God Nika, to exist regarding the question, Can strength and peace coexist without canceling each other out? Luffy addresses that question in his own way as the present-day Sun God Nika, as I've discussed multiple times in this channel, demonstrating how he strikes a balance between liberation and destruction. Additionally, Big Mom's sacrifice to reincarnate into Treasure Tree Adam can serve as another answer to the same question posed earlier. For once, she wouldn't be taking, she'd be giving. Her soul, that is, into Treasure Tree Adam, which serves as the heart of Elbaf. And just to refer back to the tree's vulnerabilities to fire and lightning, the same elements connected to Big Mom's homies Prometheus and Zeus, it would be such a poetic twist that the source of those fire and lightning powers, being Big Mom herself, which wants to find her destruction, would now, as the same person and source, protected something sacred. The irony is perfect. The woman the giants feared most becomes their guardian. The monster becomes the mother. So how do we turn Big Mom into a tree? The answer obviously lies in the mechanics of a soul fruit. Typically, it allows her to take fragments of a person's soul, or her soul itself, to animate objects. But in this instance, let's just say that after the final battle between Luffy and whoever he fights, she takes her whole soul, leaving no fragment behind, and just dumps that shit into the Treasure Tree Adam as it's dying from whatever or whoever attacked it. The tree begins to stir, its trunk begins to glow, its branches stretch to the skies, and pink blossoms bloom on its branches, echoing the cherry blossoms that healed Drum Island, the same blossoms that once made Hero Luke believe that a man only dies when he's forgotten. In this case, the blossoms say something else. Even a monster can choose to be remembered as something more. And it brings us full circle, because when Big Mom becomes the Treasure Tree Adam, she becomes a living answer to the question hanging over Elbaf since King Harold's reforms. Can you have both strength and peace? And the answer would stand tall in the heart of the island, its petals pink and glowing with life. It's the final gift of a woman who spent her whole life trying to build a family through fear, only to realize that a real family is built through love, sacrifice, and protection. And while we're on the topic of legacy and change, I don't think Kid's dead. In fact, I think we're going to see him eventually in Elbaf. And I have a whole theory about his character arc you can check out right now.
I'm aiming the album to fall off. It's pretty ironic. Shit ain't no fall off.